Our guest today is Katie Petersen. Katie helps individuals tune into their natural rhythms and unlock their own body intelligence through movement, strength, nutrition, heart centered practices, and increasing energetic awareness. Katie is a powerlifter, kettlebell coach, nutrition counselor, yoga instructor, Reiki practitioner, sound healer, spiritual life guide, and forever student of the body. Katie, welcome to the Primal Foundations podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
That is a massive resume you have there.
Yeah, it's a little wordy, right? Like there's almost like there's no one title that can encapsulate. Like I do lots of things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just like people kind of double down. Like I'm a strength coach, I'm a nutrition, but you have like all different avenues on how to get somebody healthy. And we're definitely going to be talking about those. But I want to kind of take a step back and talk about kind of your beginnings. I read that you began strength training and doing yoga at 15, and that's like such a young age to kind of get into strength training. And a lot of, especially young females, they don't get into strength training or find an avenue unless they're like in athletics. But most females, either they don't find strength training or they find it later in life. So what made you
Mhm.
get into that and this fitness space and becoming a coach?
I think there's a myriad of things that started popping into my head as you were saying that I wasn't expecting actually. So I would say depression got me into
Mhm.
it, like very simply. But I was an athlete as a kid, and I really like was naturally inclined towards like being fast, being powerful. But the more I kind of went through puberty and was in more self-conscious spaces, I really believed I wasn't good enough to be at a higher level and kind of thought my way out of being athletic. So it wasn't something I was chasing necessarily, but by 15, I was just, I don't know, I was feeling empty. I was going through a really kind of scary period, and my mom was worried about me. So I was put into a study where I was originally diagnosed with depression. So that was kind of like we didn't have necessarily the money to pay for therapy. My dad wasn't totally on board because that was kind of part of the problem. So that said, she, kind of supported it through the University of Omaha where I lived and grew up. And that was kind of the beginning stages of cognitive intelligence being part of the journey. But right around that same time, I was just craving movement. I was needing an outlet in a lot of ways. And I was joining, like, I think gym classes, we had different options. And so I joined weightlifting. And I kind of got taken under the wing of one of our football coaches. And he just saw that I had an actual like potential. There was a spark in my eye. It was probably my favorite period of the entire school day. So he was giving me, side tips and side workouts and kind of helping me and steering me. So Coach O, if he's out there anywhere, he taught me a lot. And, as a trainer, when we come into the industry, there's a lot of like bread and butter workouts, and there's maybe faulty past football coach strength and conditioning programs as the only way. He was really intelligent though. He wasn't necessarily like from an old school frame of thought. He knew how to program in a way that I think was innovative and ahead of its time, and probably more what we were learning by the time we were certifying as trainers, and wasn't really the way back then. So he was one of my maybe guideposts. And at the same time, I just kind of heard that the track and field coach was using yoga with his running athletes, and I'd never really heard of it. And they were all kind of made fun of in our school because no one knew what it was. But I went to Target, I got some VHS videos and started just making a practice out of that. So I had my powerlifting and yoga, and started running again. And that was something that came naturally when I was younger that I just really didn't do as I got older. And that became my healing practice. I didn't really know how much it was that physical part until later on, because I was also thrown into the cognitive behavioral therapy cycle. But everything kind of was the anchor and the root of how I get well and how I share for other people to get well. So yeah, that was kind of the beginning stages as to why I got thrown in to maybe an early mix, especially for a female. And I'd say that is changing, and it's really cool to see. It was definitely an anomaly back then, and I'll tell more story to that. But it got very uncomfortable being a strong female, and a place of like going out to clubs and bars in Chicago where you're the only one with muscles. So like down the road type of discomfort. But yeah, I think that was the beginnings of it. And then I just kind of got fascinated by the human body, by anatomy. I was starting a pre-med track into college because I was so interested. I just wasn't necessarily interested in being a specific kind of doctor. So I really didn't have a track there. But I'd studied nutrition as a kid. I would sit at the borders and read all the books and, you know, whatever the nutrition area was, and kind of try to learn and meet with friends and share what maybe they should do if they were doing something different with their food. So I was kind of like a pre-coach for some of the little girls in high school that I was friends with. But yeah, that was, I'd say, the very base layer of things that I didn't know I was going to come full circle back around to and make a whole career out of.
And the healing practices that you have, or I mean, all the different certifications of like the Reiki and sound healer, and I pulled this from directly from your website. To create sustainable health in our lives, it's imperative to rebuild strategies that support the entire nervous system. So what are these strategies that either you personally use or you are prescribed for your clients?
I think a lot of that kind of became a process of, well, I'm going down two avenues. So like my learning process of these practices came way, way later. It was
Mm.
more like middle to later 20s. I started questioning where I was in this space, and the physical movement and whatever alone wasn't enough. And there was an emptiness inside that I still was kind of not making friends with and not finding an actual like sanctuary to be with myself. And that was, you know, I'd say expressing as just consistently doing, overdoing, overproving, trying too hard, chasing perfectionism versus, you know, burying myself in a hole because I'm afraid I'm not going to be good enough. So there was a lot of competitive things I took on. I was like almost at I was in the national level circuit with NPC and figure competing for like 7 years. So that was kind of like, for a while, I was a little bit of Chicago's darling for like, she's going to go pro. So there was a lot of pressure I was putting on myself through those interviews and things that, you know, just my coaches weren't putting the pressure on, but I was having like an emotional combustion. So I think that my way of rehabbing out of this high pressure situation was deep diving into energetic practices and finding shamanic kind of pathways and learning with people and going to Peru and working with plant medicines and kind of getting back to the roots of just being in the body would be my simplest way of saying it. I'd say I had a really profound experience the first time I went to Peru. I was gone for 3 weeks. And as an adult, I'd never taken, I don't know, more than 1 week off. And I was my own boss for a very long time. So it wasn't like somebody was telling me I couldn't do this. It was just kind of like the way, the, you know, societal way of, yeah, you can take off around Christmas, but you don't just travel for 3 weeks. So, you know, I had this very big feeling of there's a lot of balls in the air. And if I leave, everything's going to drop. And when I actually left and worked with ayahuasca, was the plant medicine I initially was going for, but there were other things we worked with, and even just community circles that taught indigenous practices and teachings, and I'd say more ways of life versus philosophies, just ways of living. Yeah, when I left, I realized I'm not that important. No balls completely dropped. Life keeps on churning. And when you come back, it's okay. Like you didn't really disappear, not much happened, and everything is going to go back to clicking along the way it should. So it was a very eye-opening experience. But the big thing I took from being gone, letting go of all the rules that I play in my head and rewriting rules for myself because it just, you know, didn't make sense anymore, be it around nutrition or certain physical routines. I didn't work out for 3 weeks and I wasn't injured, you know, that was crazy at the time. So coming back, my nervous system was an entirely different environment. I mean, I felt like a tree, like just calm and rooted and relaxed. And my body weight was like easy to maintain versus a consistent fight. I, you know, ate only carbs while I was there because we weren't eating meat on a plant medicine diet. That in my brain is crazy. You're going to gain tons of weight, you know, all the little stories kind of just broke apart. And not that that was at all why I was going, but it's part of the experience I came back into. And it just reinforced all these rules, all these scripts, all these things you think you need to maintain and do a certain way to feel, look, and live a certain way, maybe they're not real. Maybe I haven't questioned them or challenged them. And the base level of my health, where I've never felt that spacious and easeful and also strong in my immune system, strong in my bones. I'd never felt this like version of running these specific health codes. And it all came to just resting, allowing rest, not needing to do so much, really finding a cycle that had, I'd say, a nervous system arc. And that's kind of the way I speak into even my kettlebell classes. We start with yoga, we build up our intensity, we freak each other out with how intense and challenging it is, and then we bring it back down and go into a meditation. And some people continuously say the meditation is their favorite part, and it's that kind of, we're honoring the arc. Yeah, the body is going to come down on its own, but if we can actually be with it the way we are with intensity, then you're a little more online to anything your body needs or wants in real time versus going back and fixing a problem.
And how long were you competing back when you were doing the competitions?
I did that for 7 years, which is a really long time.
Wow.
And I kept telling myself, I'll quit when it's not fun anymore. And somehow I kept finding the fun in it, but it was a very punishing driver that was, moving parts of it. That said, I think there's kind of like the tantra of life. Like the driver might have been coming from punishing mindset, but the experience I'd get when I had certain things in discipline and order and just had a structure that maintained healthy habits, other aspects of my life would feel more inspired. So even though this driver didn't come from necessarily a really healthy space, the practice it would put in play was super healthy for me and for my business and for my clients. I would kind of trickle down the motivation, and so, or trickle out, better said. So I think there was a lot of, well, that's where I feel the best, even though it hurts so much to get there. And so,
It's a tough thing. I mean, you have to manage like your whole life, right? Your whole life is managing every single day, watching what you eat, making sure you get your workouts in, and you have these competitions, and you always are like looking to peak, looking to peak, looking to peak, and better.
right, right. And I think the emotional ride of that more people talk about now, but didn't then, was your off season, you really feel terrible about yourself. You're trying to gain weight, but you don't want to gain. You don't feel like you're at your best anymore, and you're constantly questioning yourself. And I've taken a lot of women through competition, and I could kind of be there in a more emotional patterned way than just like, here's your structure. But it was interesting, as time went on, I started helping men go through bodybuilding competitions, and we really kind of rehabbed after. Like I would help them with mindset afterwards, because those rules of what you can and can't do, and that not that this is good or bad food, but you are good or bad based on what you're doing. And a lot of us come from some sort of driver that was harsh. And I think to split that apart and rewrite why I'm doing this, but I'm going to still do very similar practices, was a lot of the journey after competing.
Was it hard to kind of let go of the identity of that? Because I know I've talked with either athletes or people that have done, a bodybuilding competition, and like that's their thing. That's all they know. And then when you either take athletics or the competition away, they struggle with like, oh, what's my identity now?
Yeah, I think, if I quit 1 year earlier, which was when I should have quit, I would have really, really struggled with it. So I guess it wasn't when I should have quit, but
Mhm.
it felt like it was the end. And I really pushed another cycle where, I'll say this, I was in the top 5 every national show at that point. And then the last year, I wasn't even in the top 10. I was just smaller, and I wasn't maintaining my like density and muscle density the way that I needed to be competitive with figure. Bikini girls were getting bigger. Bikini didn't even exist when I started. I was kind of like at the early stages of competing. And so that said, figure girls are getting bigger. I'm getting smaller, and I'm actually liking my body more. So quitting was like, oh, this is what I meant by it's not really fun anymore. I started dating someone that I, really had a good connection with. And that was really something that carried me out in a different way. And at that point, my intention had shifted so much. It was just, I just want to be strong again. And you probably know, a lot of people that compete, when we're competing, we're usually at our weakest because we've depleted in such a way. So at that point, I wanted more pull-ups. I wanted to build my deadlift back up. My want was different. So it was a really pure transition. But that said, my identity switch went to, well, I'm really strong. I'm going to be the strongest girl in the room. And that was like, that's continuously been a tough one over the years when I had to start letting go of that one.
And I think I love the, like, you kind of said a little bit earlier that it's becoming more mainstream, or more of like the practice of females are strength training. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
so important. And a lot of females are finding it later. And like my age area, like there's a lot of people I know that are women that are getting into strength training now, but there's a lot of like women in their 20s, like now this is very fashionable. Like you see it on Instagram, you
Yeah.
see all these things. And this is an easy segue into you being an Iron Maiden, which some people don't know what that is. Can you talk about RKC, and you're an instructor in hard style? And I want to then get into a little bit of some of the feats that you've done, because those are freaking badass.
Yeah, thank you. So RKC is one of this like international certifying bodies for kettlebells. And I'd say when I started hearing about them, they were kind of the only one. So it was way back when everyone that knows who Pavel is, he was part of RKC at that point, and YouTube was new. So there was a lot of us, at the export on North and Wells, getting on YouTube and learning from Pavel and dragging and breaking wagons of kettlebells to the beach and learning that it's not the best when it's humid because you tear the shit out of your hands. Can I say that? So,
Fuck yeah.
okay, great. I mean, fucking awesome. So that said, it was just like, it was fun. I was like, I'd come out of college with a marketing degree. I didn't finish pre-med. So I was working 8 hours in an office and then working 8 hours at the export, usually every day. So like I blew myself up. I ended up quitting the job with security, staying in this, like, I love helping people in this way. And I love learning and being in my body. And kettlebells really spoke to that. I think there's such a unifying sense of the body. And as a kid that came from yoga and, basically powerlifting and bodybuilding, which was kind of weird, my DNA was kind of coded to that at this point. It was like it craved something unifying. And I like both the strength and the release. So kettlebells to me spoke right into the heart of what that sensation was. So then I, was researching whatever that certification was. I didn't think I had what it took for that, but I just kind of went on my journey for several years. So fast forward, I believe it was 2012, I certified, maybe 13. And that's kind of after RKC and Strong First formed their own entities, or Pavel split off from RKC and formed Strong First with former leaders. So I came into RKC at a time that schism had just happened. And there was, for lack of better terms, it felt like guerrilla warfare on all ends.
A lot
So
of
everyone was
instructors
trying
were
to
going
win.
everywhere. Yeah, I remember hearing
Yeah.
all about this. Yeah.
And Dragon Door is the body that runs the RKC certifications. And so they're a publishing company and they lost 80% of their leadership to that split. So that also lent an opportunity for people coming into RKC to rise to leadership because they wanted more of that communal atmosphere versus top down. There's only one great instructor type of teaching. So I was kind of being thrown into my cert at this time of a huge, I don't know, reorganization. And the Iron Maiden came into my sphere at that point in time. It was at my certification. And one of the instructors said, I hope she's going for this, and was kind of talking to some people I knew. And I didn't know what it was. So the Beast Tamer and the Iron Maiden are well known within the Strong First and RKC bodies. And for men, it's a 48 kilo. For women, it's a 24 kilo. The movements are the same. And so it's a weighted pull up. You have to touch the neck. I didn't know that in mine. I had no problem, but I did see somebody fail a couple of times because he didn't touch the neck, and that was terribly devastating. So you have to touch. There's a pistol. You have to come all the way up to standing. You can hold it here. You can hold it in the rack position. But yeah, single leg squat. And then there's just a strict single arm press. So that I ended up doing 2 years after my cert. And I'd say I trained for it for 2 years. And that's a thing that I see in a lot of ways was a journey, the first big journey after my bodybuilding. And I transitioned out of figure competing 2012. And by 2013, that was when I was certifying and getting into this Iron Maiden training and reading books and trying to figure out, like, how do I actually peak all three of these movements at the same time? Because, you know, I can peak pulling, but you don't usually peak pressing at the same time as that, because it's a lot. And I'm not that big. So there's a lot of, you know, the body weight doesn't change based on what weight you lift. I weigh, you know, less than a buck 20 most times. So there's a differential of someone that maybe is heavier that can lift that. But once they're doing the weighted pull up, that might even that out a little bit. So it's just a very interesting triad to try to peak all at the same time. And I'd say that journey gave me a sense of identity again. And then it also was not gratifying for most of it. And that's what I thought was really cool. Like, you have literally no reward almost the whole time, and you never know if you're going to get it. And you just keep going. It's kind of like life. And that's, you know, it's not that there's no reward, but they're small. And if you don't really celebrate the small little wins, then it can get really just, you know, miserable. You just don't feel like you're going to get to this point, because it really did feel pretty far out of reach. So yeah, I think that was a big peak experience of learning for me that also shifted me into more of the shamanic learning right after that. So like the identity shifting and transforming and spiraling together was a really, I'd say, polar seeming, but very much linked.
It's, if anybody's ever seen it, like when people actually go for the Beast Tamer or the Iron Maiden, it's an awesome event, and the place is going wild. And it's, to me, to think, like, again, there's guys that do the Beast Tamer that are as big as me or smaller than me or even bigger than me that go through this process. And same with the women. It's a lot of discipline, it's a lot of training, and it's a lots of ups and downs, but it's just such an awesome thing to see. And kudos to you, because, you know, when you tell people like, oh yeah, I could do a pull up. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, but there's a 24K attached to me. Oh, wow. That's awesome. And with the strength training, and you're a coach now, do you, for all the different places or privates, do you only coach, because you went from weightlifting and now kettlebells, you only coach kettlebells now, or it's kind of like a hybrid of, we do kettlebells, we do barbell?
It's a hybrid for sure when it comes to training. I'd say almost every session, people know my nature so well, they'll just say, like, this feels really weird, we need to fix it. And they, you know, they know they can deadlift heavy that day if we want to, but like, will you come up with some strange thing that will get to this little muscle? And I really move intuitively with someone's body, and be it with yoga or kettlebells, or, you know, I just have a really big toolbox of how to meet the anatomy. And I feel I would say academically and intuitively versed. So it's not like leaning hard on one side where, you know, I think that can get into not being as beneficial. So there's, yeah, just really meeting the body with what it needs. But everybody I am working with, I am trying to build their strength. No matter what the body needs, there's this primary goal of, I want you to be an embodied powerhouse. However that translates for you, and however, you know, they need to feel, that's going to be very, very different, because there's different people. But I want them to feel like they are taking up space, and that they are in charge of their body, and that their body is there for them. So I'd say there's a myriad of things that we would do in a movement session, is usually what I call them. Even if it's like just heavy weightlifting. I was just talking to one of the athletes in the competition I run on Monday. And, you know, we were saying that our favorite client, though, is the person that says they want to come in and learn a skill. I want to learn kettlebells. I want to learn how to power lift. Like, I love that. I love teaching people to be teachers, not teaching people to be students forever. So like, you learn this, you know, this skill, and then you can take that and expand that. And that said, it's not just the myriad of movement. I have clients that I will design a whole program around. Tomorrow, for example, a man that weight trains with me is doing sound healing with me tomorrow, because that's what we decided his body was going to need in the kind of layout or blueprint of how we designed his program. So There's the other aspects of energy practices. And I don't think I've fully answered before that nervous system arcing, going into more breath work and things of that nature, where we're just bringing more of the nervous system online to our mind and our mind's awareness to what the sympathetic and parasympathetic state actually feels like and how we can balance that or even bring ourselves into or out of one of the other. So we can do that by even just patterns of breath. And sound healing is a whole other, avenue of something, but just to say that it might be deadlifting on Monday and sound healing on Thursday.
That's like, just when I hear those kind of things, it's like, that's like a sign of a good trainer. That's, you're giving the people not necessarily always what they want, you're giving them what they need. And
Yeah.
I feel like as a trainer myself, I want to lift this over, I want to military press this weight, or I want to do that, or I want to do this, or I want to go harder. And I'm like, we need to take a step back. We need to take a step back, and there's no reward you're going to get today by going as hard as possible and crushing yourself, because there's very little reward and a lot of risk involved with that. But hearing people when they talk about, we're doing breath work today, or we're doing something different that's not going to tax your body and you have recovery, that what the narrative needs to be, instead of having because people get afraid to go to gyms a lot because of the drill sergeant, like, we're doing this, you gotta, we're doing it for time, keep going. And there are points when it's okay to push, right? But you can't do it all the time. Can't do it.
And I think, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I think that's kind of like, I think that turns me off so much, that drill sergeant or sergeant style of pushing teaching, where at the same time I am it sometimes, but in that understanding of, but you're in charge. So I'm just thinking of my kettlebell class in general. When I see someone just totally letting themselves fall off and I know they have more, I'll start shouting, we're in the trenches. You don't rest now, you rest after. But after, they know there's something soft coming. There's something like a breathe down. There's something, we're going to get there. I'm not in the trenches the whole time, but now for this finite period of time, I want you to move. So there's kind of we balance that with intensity too. But if you don't oxygenate the tissues and let yourself really practice recovery, how can you ever hit max intensity? The arc limits itself at that point, and you're just mediocre the whole time.
Yeah. And speaking of going into intensity, let's start talking about the Kettle PRT.
Yes.
So, how did you're one of the co-founders of this. How did you come up with this? And what is this competition?
So this is a kettlebell and weightlifting competition that my former partner, well, we're now business partners, but we developed it. He kind of started writing it, I'd say back in 2013, and then just brought me on board into it. And, there's a lot of movement and excitement that we started to transfer into our friends that we were helping certify or leading classes with. But it was very kettlebell based, even though there's a pull-up event and a, barbell deadlifting event. It's very kettlebell system based. So we just started spreading this in a very grassroots way with the, people that we were in connection with in Chicago, and decided we need to run a mock trial of what this might look like. And at the time, there were 7 events. They were really hard. I remember when it was first kind of put in front of me, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And there's no way I can get my clients to do it if I can't do it. So that was like, we ran through the mock trial of this, and, 2 years after I saw it, or a year after I saw it, and I was different, time was different, and it was fun. And it was easier than I thought to get through it, because you're just max repping or max intervaling something. You're not doing 5 sets of something. So to me, it felt not as demanding as I expected, but very, very challenging. And in that moment, I'm like, I felt lit up. We all got, and there were 5 of us mock trialing it. We all got PRs. We all did better than we expected. And it was this energy in the room. It was doing it in community. And it was very obvious to me that this is part of what I need always. As a kid that came from, depression, I need to be around people and I need to be in movement around these people. This is just a passion of how I get through life. Maybe someone else's is sewing. So I think, there's people like me, and let's share this out here. And I had this decision that I'm going to pick out some of my most least conditioned clients, and they're going to do it. And that was my challenge to myself as a coach. And also I knew how disconnected they were feeling in their bodies and then lives, that this was going to give them something different. So it's a team event. And at the time there was a lot that we hadn't decided. The scoring now is something that I have continuously developed and shifted and changed, but it is pound for pound scoring. So everything you lift is relative to your body weight, be it a volume score. If it's, the kettlebell snatch test, you're doing many, 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 many reps. So it's a whole different type of equation. And we've got bonuses and penalties based on, picking certain weights that are higher than your standard. So different things like that will play with the scoring and gamify it a little bit. But basically, for simplicity, it's pound for pound scoring, which to me means the smallest person in the room can win. So we've had, a small guy win the deadlift competition against 600-pound deadlifters because pound for pound, he was stronger. And I liked that even playing field for many reasons, but personally, I'm writing it to me. Like, I'm a woman. Can I win the room? And there are many times that, yeah, I probably could have. I'd jump in when somebody was injured for a team, but I would never compete in the whole thing. So I never really got to find out, but it was written for that potential. And over the years, there were many strong women that we were working with, whether they were clients or friends, but it was still new, I think, for women to get really strong in a layperson's job but not be a trainer. And then also, if they weren't doing CrossFit, it wasn't really, a thing that we were breeding as cool, I guess. So I saw people getting stronger, stronger, stronger. And I just felt really good about, I'd say, going back full circle to that identity shift, having clients that were now pressing more weight than me and me being excited for them versus like, oh, I'm coming to get you, So that said, it took several years. This whole thing started in 2014. It's now 9 years later. And this year we had our first female overall champion across the whole room. So that was what it was written for, was that potential. It's not that I am any less excited when a man wins, but it's that potential of you versus you, which I believe is true competitors' mindset. And people that compete know that. And so this helps that shine. What are your stats and how do you better your stats every time?
And what are the different events that people have to run through?
So it's the pull-up. And just as a disclaimer, many people get zeros in certain events because they don't have all the training background, but they still compete. So the pull-up is one that I'd say some people they don't have pull-ups yet, but they can do everything else. So they do. So that's event one. Turkish get-up, it's just a max rep each side. Then there is the snatch test. We used to have the standard 5-minute snatch test. And for people that don't know, that's the kettlebell movement that comes all the way overhead. So that you do in 3 minutes and 30 seconds, as many as you can get. There's bonuses and penalties based on the weight that you pick. The next event is a version of the Beast Tamer and Iron Maiden. So it's the single arm press, the weighted pull up, and the pistol, but you can choose any of your max weights. It's not the 24 or 48. And now we've made it a little bit easier because now we're a little bit older. So you only have to pick 2 of the lifts. It used to be all 3. So that's, helping people that are new to this. And then also aging knees. Not everybody can pistol anymore. So, and some people never pistoled. So, that's something that, it makes it a little more accessible. And it's kind of always what I wanted without taking the challenge out of it. And then the next event is the deadlift. And that's just regular barbell deadlift. The last event is a kettlebell complex, and it's double cleans to squat into a push press into a renegade row. And that's for time. I'd say it's probably the hardest event. You do it for 5 minutes, but only 3 people from the team have to do it. So, if someone's brand new, they can kind of pawn it off on someone.
I had the privilege of being one of the judges this year. And I just remember, shout out to our mutual friend, Vigno, one of the clients at Shift Performance. And he just reached out to me. He was like, I have a friend, Katie, they're doing this kettlebell competition. They need a judge. I go, I'm in. He goes, you don't even know
Yes.
what we're doing. I go, it's a kettlebell competition. I'm like, I've never for people that don't know, there is competitive, kettlebells, which is a little bit of a different thing, but like a hard style
Yeah.
competition. I was like, yeah, I'm in. And then we got in touch, and I was like, yeah, I'll be there. And just the energy of, I think there was like one team that was just like, they may have even got a couple zeros here and there. They did not care. They were like they were dancing, having fun. People were deadlifting crazy, hitting PRs. I'm just sitting there scoring. I'm like, let's go. Like, it's just, the energy of the room was so awesome. And I was like, this is great. And as soon as like I saw everything happen, I go, I'm getting a team. I'm
Yes.
100% getting a team. I'm just gonna stack my team. We're all coming, and we're gonna be competing, because I'm like, I gotta get in. I gotta get in on this. When is gonna be the next Kettle PRT?
The next event is April 20th, so 4/20, 2024. And just another note to, that energy in the room, it's so big, it's so fun, and it's like the expression of everyone's training into it. We usually kind of start opening up ourselves to, let's start forming teams about, I'd say, 3 months out, or just we'll start practicing or getting coaches involved to get their teams together. And it just gives us that sense of what I was always seeking. There's a discipline in it. Powerlifting and yoga gave that to me when I was just not at my best. And I think part of my like actual message in the world is there's joy in melancholy spaces, and melancholy is also okay. And you just have to keep going. So when you have community, when you have a shared goal, and when you have a team, you can have the bad days and still know you're going to get back up and be indulging and disciplined versus forcing yourself into it, because there's something fun on the other side of it. So I think there's like a very core of my heart is poured into what the ethos of it is. And I see people really, as clients coming into it, see themselves in a whole new light coming out of it. And as coaches, I it's so excited to actually train this way, because the excitement we have of someone, oh, I want to learn a skill, not just like lose weight. It's the same for this. I'm like, I want to teach you 17 skills because we got to compete. And it puts something out in front of me that's like, I feel purpose. I feel purpose in every session I'm with clients that are competing, but even the clients that aren't, I'm giving them some of that same energy. They're getting that kind of ripple effect off of how motivated we all are getting ready for this comp. So I think it's just a win-win for people competing and coaching.
Yeah, having a goal is super important. I think me in particularly, like, I know that there's a few of those events that I'm like, I don't really train that as much anymore. Like, I'm a kettlebell instructor. I've been doing a lot of barbell lately. I'm like,
Mm,
I got to start snatching again. And I'm
yeah.
actually really excited to like start building up a program to have that goal, and to redevelop my skill a little bit more, and just refine it, and find, hey, where is my where am I now, and how can I get to even better? And knowing that
Hmm.
it's a 3 minute and 30-second test versus a 5 minute stat test, well, that's a little different now. Am I going 28? Am I going
Yeah,
like,
you are.
what am I gonna do here? So it's different. I haven't done something like that. So I'm excited, and it does spark the interest. And you said it like 4 or 5 times in this podcast of like developing skill. And that is super important, of developing the skill and learning the skill. And that teaches you the discipline and stripping your ego away, because doing an exercise to do the exercise is not necessarily going to get you anywhere. But taking a long time to develop the skill and get good at it, that's going to teach you the discipline. That's going to get you results. But having that goal is just a little spark, which is awesome. I can't wait to get back to snatching. I'm excited.
Yeah. And I hear
It,
you. I'll get lost on like a deadlift track where I'm like, I haven't touched a kettlebell for like 3 months. I got to do that. And then it's fun again. And I think,
yeah.
as I don't know if you share this like experience, but like people are blown away when I'm like, half the time I don't want to work out, like half the time. So like to me, it's not about, exercise for exercise sake. That'll produce results, but I'm not motivated to just do that. I want to grow skills. I want to see myself learn new things. I want to try new practices. I want an integration of like different movement, because that keeps me excited about it. Otherwise, I'd quit. So,
Yeah.
I think everybody's different. Some people can do the same thing day in, day out for 40 years, but I am not that person.
And being in the space now of you you've been a trainer and just like from bodybuilding all the way to where you are now, what's the strength regimen look like in the differences kind of how you were before and what we're training now?
So it's difficult because I've started jujitsu this past year. So that like it's like a stick in the wheel of having like any sort of routine in my strength that I keep getting random injuries. So that, fingers, toes. I sprained my wrist on Monday because I didn't say ow fast enough. Like little things that it shifts the regiment. But when I'm really in what I want to be doing, I'm a very seasonal lifter. I go really heavy in the winter. Like I maxed my deadlift out on May 5th, I remember. And then I really cut way back off because I want to bike ride and be outside and do pull-ups and monkey bars. And so like I kind of shift more towards calisthenics in the summer. I'll still do kettlebell work, and I'd say I'm hitting weights in a way that's supportive 2 times a week. But it looks like I'm weightlifting. A lot of times I'm doing loaded mobility. So if I'm saying when I have a weight in my hand, it's probably 4 or 5 times a week. But that summer is kind of all over the place game playing. When I'm in the winter, I'd say I'm deadlifting twice a week because I always like building my deadlift. So I'm either doing one heavy day and one light patterning day, or I'm doing one heavy deadlift day and double kettlebell front squat day. So that's kind of how I balance out what my like main lower body lifts are. I also usually throw in lots of body weight depth for like pistols. I'll do weighted pistols. I'll do sissy squats. So there's, kettlebell swings, all the stuff that kind of builds around supporting the deadlift. I always do Turkish get-ups for warm-ups with deadlift. And I'm probably doing pull-ups every day. So there's, even if I'm just hanging from the bar and doing a couple before jujitsu practice, I'm on the bar. I'm always hanging. I'd say that's even just to give me space in my AC joint. I don't have to do it for grip strength, but I like to challenge myself and see how long I can be on the bar. So there's that. But there's kind of a balance of the deadlifts and pull-ups that I like to match with a press day. I'm either doing kettlebell press ladders as a focus or bench pressing as a focus, but not both at the same time. Doesn't mean I'm not doing both in the same week, but there's only one that I'm actually building. So I kind of use that as, advice for other people that are multi-sport athletes. Probably want to pick 1 or 2 lifts that you're building. If I'm building a lift and I'm working on a skill like muscle ups, I'm not building 2 lifts. I'm building a skill and I'm working a lift. So I'm really balancing that so that I have time and energy for yoga, for loaded mobility, for way too much jujitsu. And that's, just kind of my balance is not overwhelming my system's demand of where I really do want to excel. I'm not just working out for working out's sake. I want to excel in something because that's what's fun for me. And so I don't overload how many goals I have at once. And that would be probably one of the biggest differences in my training, especially for, competitive, I'd say bodybuilders. You're trying to build everything, big back, big leg, so you do so much and it's all hypertrophy based in a way. And I came from powerlifting. I enjoy power. So that's kind of what I like playing with the most.
And
Max reps.
there's a difference between hypertrophy and strength. I'll go in the gym, and again, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but there'd be somebody that's way bigger than me. He looks great popping out of the t-shirt, and I'm lifting as much as that
Mm-hmm.
person, and I'm not that big. And
Yeah.
there's a difference, but I mean the beach muscles, that's a thing. It is a thing. And for your nutrition, what's like the typical, do you have like, I'm a macros, this is my plan, and I got to make sure I'm hitting the numbers, or is it more of like intuitive eating?
It's it's such a blend at this point that I feel like I'd be lying if I say it's so intuitive because I come from a background that studied nutrition and was a bodybuilder for 7 years. So like intuitively, I know the rules. So there's something about it that like it's definitely a blend of, certain things that I do hold as basically true. So let me try to make that more clear. So like I would say carbs and fats have an inverse relationship. Protein is your base as far as like if I'm trying to help someone clean up their diet, which a lot of times I'm not trying to clean up my macros at this point. But that is what I would focus on a lot when I was bodybuilding, was like very specific macros. So that, and getting enough vegetables and fish oil and things of that nature. So supplementation has always been a big thing for me. Just, agriculture is depleted. We think we're eating nutrients, but we're eating a lot of dead plants. So there's that. But I think that, even that said, that I'm saying carbs and fats are inverse, and that's basically true. There's plenty of times I just feel from my body, I need to cut meat out for a couple of weeks. I'm going to go plant-based. Well, now it just is carbs and fats. The protein is lower. So I think at a certain way, if there's a balance in that kind of triad of foods, you can't overeat if you're calorically not out of your, I'd say, your width of what your energy expenditure is. But I do feel I'm very in tune with my system, like beyond what's normal. Like I know when I need red meat. I know when I'm getting sick because my teeth start to hurt a couple days before. Like there's little things that I just kind of know what my body is needing. But I also think that that's been learned, and that's something that can be taught and learned, and that people kind of need baseline rules. And if to look at a baseline rule set, I think macros is a smart one. And then to start to feel their way through it, and that not every day is the same. And, eating more on the day you're lifting might be smart, but maybe eating more the day after is smarter. I don't know. It just kind of depends on what's your body need. Are you starving? You should probably eat. Like when I've deadlifted really heavy, the next day I need more food.
Yeah, our feeling that I'm hungry versus like I'm not hungry, but I'm on the couch right now and I want to just go eat just because
I'm her too. I have to be careful.
Yeah, I am I have to abstain from certain things because I will devour things. And I
Yeah.
just I have to stay away from them. It's like there's like, the potato chip analogy. It's like you just can't have one. Yeah, I know. I will have them all.
Yeah. And funny story, I don't know if it'll be on air, but funny story because, Vigno, I had a surgery, and it was a really intense surgery a couple of years ago. And I just didn't want to see anybody. I was in my cave, and Vigno wanted to come over and like bring snacks. I want to see you. I want to make sure you're okay. I was like, no. And then I sent him a text, and I'm like, well, you can if you bring cookies. So he came with like a bunch of sweets. And I, can't move. I'm not allowed to move for 12 weeks. I'm not even allowed to touch my toes. I can't lift more than 5 pounds. And so
Wow.
it was like the first time I'd really, like, I was actually bedridden for several weeks after the surgery. Not bedridden, but I couldn't be in bed. I had to sleep sitting up.
Hmm.
So like it was just a very intense time. And a lot of times then you start eating, right? Like where do you get pleasure when you're not getting, I was going for winter walks, but that said, he brought all this food here, and I'm like, I'm going to eat it all. Once I finished all the cookies, all the like chocolate covered pretzels, I started individually freezer bagging, like the exact portion amounts. I put them all in the freezer. And I thought it was so smart until a couple days later, where I'm like, it turns out they're better when they're coming out of the freezer. So you don't have to
Ooh.
wait for them to thaw. They're very good that way. But I hear you. Like I've had Girl Scout cookies in my trunk, and you can't have it unless you go out to the trunk.
I work at a school. My main gig is a teacher, and there's always somebody that's like Girl Scout cookies. It's time, and I always try to support, all the other teachers. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna buy X amount of cookies. Leave them in the office. Don't give them to me because
Smart
I'll eat the
guy.
whole. I'll eat the whole. This is for the office. It's not for me.
Yep. Yeah.
One of the things I want to end on and kind of want to talk about before we segue to the end, or to kind of talking about some of the things coming up for you, is like mental health and movement and like the importance of play. I think this is something that is very overlooked. What's your take on the importance of play and movement, and how does it affect us?
I think it even goes back to that story in Peru and with the nervous system. I think play is like it's a language unto itself within the nervous system. I'm not in a sympathetic go 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 state if I'm in childlike wonderment, enjoying the colors and the sounds and the birds and the just being excited to like be here, whatever that means. And so I don't believe that comes very naturally once we are adults. There's a lot of unwinding to figure out what is my source of play. And I was in a shamanic apprenticeship many, many years ago. And my teacher at the time was kind of like, what are your hobbies other than lifting? I'm like, I don't think I have any. And so, there was all this like, what did you do as a kid? And kind of pulling up inner childlike nature. And I just like had an onslaught of like, okay, I'm going to take dance classes. I'm going to take art classes again. And like, it was a lot. It was almost like overwhelming, but I found these spaces where I'm like, I'm me. Like I feel this 3 hour painting class is like, this is me. I love doing this. And so it's not necessarily all movement based, but I will get back to that. I think there's a lot of just like, where can you really cut out the obligatory adult things you have to do and just get lost in time for a little bit? I like, where can I really just let myself not look at a watch or a clock or a phone for 3 hours? And I got drums behind me. I started taking drum lessons. Like I was just like, let's find it. What are my hobbies? But I enjoyed all of it. And I think there's just kind of like the other side of it is not needing to get good at something. So even, lifting and movement being my hobby, like I'm good at it and I want to excel at it. And I'm, trying to be a master in different ways because it's my craft. So when it's like, okay, I used to be really good at art, but can I just do it for fun? There's kind of like this productivity thing that we've got such a world built around. You're not useful or you're not lovable, even if you're not useful, might be a better way to put it. Or if you're not productive, like you're kind of a piece of shit, or you don't deserve to sit on your couch and eat cookies and watch a TV show unless you produce today. And so I think it was a lot of unwinding and having to have longer settings for that and a whole kind of ritual around it. If I'm going to dance class, I'm then going to go get coffee after. I'm going to read part of a book and not go do something right away to counter the fun I had. So I'd say, years later, where it really has progressed into so much of a movement for me has been through COVID. I found a lot of people in the calisthenics community, which I just didn't do a lot of calisthenics. I just found people at that point in time that's what they did. And so every Sunday we started meeting at Harrison Park and playing on the bars for like 4 hours and teaching each other new skills, learning new skills, sometimes just sitting and eating watermelon, like I'm tired, but I'm here. And I think especially during COVID, there was a lot of mental health changes for people. I was diagnosed with depression at 15. I know the dark forest, but like I think there were people that had never experienced it. So I felt this almost beautiful way of being able to hold people's hand through the dark forest versus get out of there, positive vibes only, And it was kind of like, no, like all vibes matter. So we're gonna be here together, but let's be together no matter what. Let's show up on a Sunday. And I think that was a really healing space for a lot of us because we weren't just moving, we were talking about how we felt. And that community in and of itself, the calisthenics community, it's just kind of different. Like they're just a cool breed of people. So, they like to play outside and do things that kids do. And so that brought me into physical embodied nature of what I've been kind of chasing so long, where if you like sewing, sew. If you like painting, paint. But I think movement and playful movement is the way to make it really come online because it's physical.
And do you guys still meet up, or is that like, oh, kind of not so much anymore?
This year is different because I was getting ready for a jiu-jitsu tournament. So Sundays moved to a different park. I met up with them, I think twice this year, which was crazy sad. But like we had a couple beach playground days where some of the guys brought up pull-out bars, and I've got some videos on my Instagram where like I do okay, but their tricks are amazing. So that's like a performance. I would say that those 2 beach days were the favorite days of my whole summer because it's just, friends that know each other that don't always see each other. But when you get together, there's that raised energy. Everyone does different things they can never pull off on their own. And so I think it gave me more of what I used to just give in the PRT. I got to just be a party to. And I realized this is what I need. I think this is what humans need. I think we need more play. We need more non-productivity. We need to be with friends for no reason. And that's, I don't know, part of what even the jiu-jitsu community gives me. I'm doing something that's really risky and kind of dangerous to the body and really hard for no reward other than community and shared discipline and shared love of movement.
Yeah, community is huge. And you also said something earlier. You said like you don't have to get good at it. You don't, it's something that we put so much pressure on ourselves to try to be the best and to succeed and all those things. But I'm on a softball team right now. One of my movement things is doing rec things in the seasons. And I'm in 16-inch softball now, and I have like a friend league
Fun.
that does volleyball. And our volleyball team is like kind of good. We're all right, but it's more about like, again, community and having fun. And we lose the game, it's whatever.
Yeah.
It's rec league, right? But our softball team is like 0-6. We are terrible, but I enjoy going and running the bases and
Yes.
hitting the ball and having fun with my friends and just having the camaraderie. And I
Yeah.
don't care. I don't care if we win the rec league. Like, it doesn't matter. We'll just
Right.
go out there and have fun. Uh, for you, what's some things that might be upcoming? I know you have the Kettle PRT coming up in April. Is there any new things coming up for you, whether the website stuff, online things?
I wish I had something to share other than the Kettle PRT. That's all I've got planted on the calendar. I do host group sound healing sessions. I just don't have anything on the calendar yet. I do private sessions also with that. But I would say, yeah, there's nothing of a group setting I've got planned out right now. I've run online programs for like resetting and nervous system resets, gut brain detoxes, and things like that in the past. So there's maybe something that I'm going to do in the spring, but again, I haven't done it yet. So maybe more to come.
Okay, and a group sound bath.
Hmm.
I don't even know what that is. What is
Okay.
that?
So
I'm
that's like,
intrigued.
yeah. So that's like I do the Tibetan bowls and crystal singing bowls. And that's primarily the sound. I might bring in, I've got a tank drum. I might start using more. I have certain instruments that are just like kind of for effect. Like I don't even know what it'd be called. It's a big bamboo stick that when you turn it upside down, it sounds like it's raining.
Oh
But the things
yeah.
that are actually doing things to your body, well, they all are, but the sound bowls themselves they're tuned. They're tuned to certain frequencies and certain hertz. And, if we're connecting to being aware of a chakra system, some of them are connected to certain chakras in the body. But I'll say this on a more basic level, it's resetting your cells. Your cells are going to line up to a certain frequency so that your body can come into a truer state of relaxation. And there's been, different studies on sound syncing, and kind of it's called entrainment. So one interesting example was like there was a creak on a railroad track that just like it kept creaking with a rhythm, and all the crickets sunk or synced to it. So it's like that's what our cells actually do. So if they can sync to something that's natural and not heightened and frictioned and kind of erratic, if they can sync to something natural, you can kind of reset your own internal body settings on a physiological level. And there is a lot in medicine that we don't think about, like ultrasound is sound. And so, when we break down sound waves in different ways into medical equipment, that's a version of that. And this is just, you let yourself go into a space of just receiving and kind of soaking in the sounds of the room. I go from soothing into slightly disruptive because that's what the mind does too. So it's kind of like you got to shake things loose and then soothe that again. So sometimes it's going to sound awful, or there's a tone that for you sounds bad and for someone else is soothing, but that's your particular journey that you're going on. And on the other side, you can kind of come out with a different physical feeling. A lot of times people are tired, they need a lot of water. You actually do get dehydrated like you had a massage. But if you treat it in more of kind of a full throttle emotional somatic experience, you can come into it almost like ceremony where you set an intention, you let go of it, you let go of your body, and on the other side you kind of revisit that intention and you see, did any insights come into that, or did I experience something in my life that I went into that and had a different response and did better than I usually do. So there's a lot that you can kind of expand it out into, or you can just make it a really relaxing night for your body.
That sounds awesome. The next one I'm there. I'm
Yes,
there.
I will let you
I
know
gotta
for
check it out.
sure.
Yeah. How can people connect with you, whether it's a website or your Instagram?
My website is activeevolution.net. My Instagram is definitely an easy way to connect. That's at Katie Petersen Lifting. Petersen is 3 E's, SEN at the end. Those are probably the two ways that are the best.
Cool.
I'd say I've
Awesome.
got some videos on a YouTube channel, but they're not like, it's not like a real subscriber YouTube channel. So I don't even know. I don't know the numbers. I think it's Katie Petersen 943 or something. But yeah, if you DM me, I'll give you the info and you can do some of the mobility stuff I've put up there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Katie, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time and to come on to the show. And this is great. I'm definitely going to be, watching your stuff and looking for the Kettle PRT and also some of your instructional with the sound bath and everything. That sounds awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. This has been
Cool.
fun. I
Awesome.
appreciate all the questions. It's interesting to, kind of go through it. Like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? What are we here to share? And it's just, yeah, it's
That's
cool
it.
to,
And at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's just
yep,
a lot of people don't know the information it's in our heads. But if you
yep.
can spark those things of like, oh, that's interesting, I want to try that, or hey, that what you guys are talking about right there is super motivating. I want to go do that now. That's what
Mm-hmm.
it's here for.
Yep.
It's
Love it.
awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you to everybody listening to the Primal Foundations podcast.